first thing I'm going to do is we're just going to open up Matrix, like just the regular path to making our way over to ITSORealEstate.ca. Once we're in there and we're kind of on the dashboard, that's when I'll give you a little more information of kind of the breakdown and the intention that I have for the content and the direction and everything. So let's start off here with ITSORealEstate.ca. Okay, the home of our Matrix system currently, ITSO being Information and Technology Systems of Ontario, that new rebranding that the Ortis and the Ontario Collective have put together. Just going to log in OMID and password here. Okay, so here's the very first thing that you would notice if you are logging in for the first time of the day, or perhaps if you timed out during your session. There's a bit of a transition page, so do expect this one. It is currently still being reworked by ITSO, and the goal is that once it's kind of all working well and all the links are created, the idea is that you'd be able to just kind of, you're a click away from all the more commonly used utilities that you might use day to day in your business. Very first one, and since today's training is all about the ITSO Matrix, we're going to be, of course, continuing through in that first application here. Let me zoom in is the word I'm looking for. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Hopefully everybody could see that on screen. And this would be our actual landing page for Matrix. Okay, so I'm actually just going to go to this tab, which was that transition page. Since I don't see myself using any additional ones on there for today, I might just close it out and make my way over to this this tab where we're actually on the Matrix system. So as far as just starting to talk about the layout in general, okay, so I mean, looking at this landing page, just understanding that it is made up by kind of some drop-down menus up towards the top. There's also a drop-down menu when you select kind of the account that you're logged into presently. Okay, maybe some search fields that we're going to end up talking about, and as well this dashboard concept towards here where you end up having these widgets that you can move around and manipulate. So we're definitely going to be talking about that a little bit more as well. When it comes to the content and the agenda for today, if I was to break it into two separate sessions, like two separate topics, let's call it, the first half of the session is going to be all kind of structured around your settings, the different things that come into play, maybe some settings that you want to have a look at before you start sending listing information to clients, right? We're going to talk about the settings, the portal, where the information comes from, because there are a few different sources. Some of the things we do in our settings are going to be on Matrix, and some things are going to be on the actual board website, the Oakville Milton Real Estate Board website. So we're going to open up that tab, we're going to talk about that, and all the different places where these settings come into play. So that's the first solid section. From there, we're going to transition into more of the search features on Matrix. Probably the most commonly used tool that you're going to be using is really searching for listings. So I'm just going to set up a solid foundation for that so you understand the different sides of what you are looking at when you're breaking down the information. And we're going to kind of work through that and get to the point where we're saving the search and talking about how we customize those listing displays. So really those main topics, the two topics for the session are like everything to do with your account and your settings, and then followed by kind of setting up the search so you're very comfortable doing that. I think that it basically kind of sums it up. So let's hop back into the dashboard here and start talking about this concept. So when you're working on this screen, as I mentioned a second ago, you can manipulate quite a few different options on here. Like the end goal is that yours is going to look totally different than mine. You can change it all up, and generally what you're going to be wanting to do is bringing out the utilities that you're going to use more, or most likely day to day, things to make you a little bit more efficient. So as you can see here, right, I can move them around. I can also close them out. If I start hitting this little X at the top, Well, what ends up happening is they get tucked away in the widget that's actually labeled additional. So like this search widget here, if I close it, it's just going to pop up right here into additional. Concierge, market stats, right? If I close them all out, I technically can get as simplified as really just having the news and alerts, which is the one widget that's pasted there. You can't move this one. This one's in the top left. It's where your brokerage, as well as the board, can reach out and send you some updates, some information. Okay. And then you have the additional, which does not have a way to kind of close, only a way to kind of minimize it. So here would be like the most simplified version of a dashboard you can ever see, right? But if you were to kind of open up your additional, and then you start dragging out the ones that you might be using. So today we're going to talk about the search widget, right? The hot sheets are going to come into play at some point, right? A couple different things here. So, right, you end up sort of pulling out maybe a couple that you might start getting used to, and then as you start to get familiar with all these other widgets, right, you'll probably end up pulling them out as well. But just bear in mind, right, if you're wondering about something specific, these are labeled as widgets whenever we refer to them. Okay. External links, of course, as well. Really good time to maybe say a few words about that one, because we will actually be using a link in this particular widget. Okay. As far as, since I mentioned a second ago that some of the settings and the things that you're working on, it might be distributing from a different source. And one of those sources is the board website. So you have a link to the OMDREB website, you have a link to the members area on the OMDREB website. That'd be like the quickest way to get in there, right? If I just clicked on this members area dues payment, pop open a new tab, and I would be inside of the members area on OMDREB.on.ca, which is our board website. Right, you would make your way over here to look at your dues payment history, maybe if you need your tax information from previous purchases in 2020, for example, right? And it actually ends up being the spot where you can view past videos and past webinars as well. So the fact that you have a video training bank here on the left, maybe I'll shed some light on that one really quickly here, right? You can always access our more recent webinars, such as today's, for example, right? Introduction to ITSO. If you ever hop in there, have a look at the content there, you can kind of follow through for a little bit of a refresher. Same with intermediate and the Authenticide web forms, which is on rotation right now. Okay, professional development ends up being all of the webinars where a keynote speaker has given us permission to record and post it on the website as well. So big list of kind of archived and different videos that might be helpful. Of course, the OMDREB rotation is just towards the top here as well. So I'll close that out. That ended up just being this members area and dues payment. Kind of when I clicked on it, it just pops up and you're already in there. Okay. As far as going into some of the different settings that we have, the very first one that I want to talk about is where your information is actually distributing from. Okay, and what I mean by that is, and you don't have to follow along in this part, I'm just going to pull up my profile on Matrix so that you can see it. For example, right, if I just do like a member search for myself, I could type in my OMID perhaps, right, it would pull up my information here, association staff. When you hop in there, we're going to talk about this profile picture in a little bit. When it comes to the information here on this form, okay, that's what I mean by it distributes from the Oakville board website, right? If I wanted my cell phone number to show up in here instead of being just the work number, well, I have to go and make that change really quick in my profile in the members area, okay? Same thing if I went into the settings here by hovering my matrix and clicking settings, or if I clicked on my name towards the right and clicked on settings, same exact place. Right? If I click on my information, you'll notice that in this section, the info is kind of grayed out. Right? You wouldn't make a change in this section particularly. Where you would go is the board website. So let's make our way there now. Just like how you saw a second ago, right? I can click on the OMDREB website. I can click on the members area and external links if that's the case. But just to show you a different way of getting there as well, right? If I opened up a new tab and I just went and typed in OMDREB.ca, same exact thing. I can just go to the source here. It'll redirect to OMDREB.on.ca, and the members area is just up here towards the top of the screen. Click on that, enter my OMID and password. Perfect, same exact thing. And what we're looking for is actually my profile. When I click on that option of my profile here from the left, this is the form that sends that information over to Matrix. Okay, so we've got profile picture, got a little bit of information here. You have access to change any of the fields that are kind of in white here. The one that's kind of grayed out, for example, right? If I had like a legal name change or my brokerage change or anything like that, that would just be a really quick email to membership@omdreb.ca. Wonder if it's written anywhere on here. Ah, it doesn't seem to be. Okay. But it would be membership@omdreb.ca if I, of course, if I had a legal name change or anything like that. But for some of the minor ones, right? Like if I wanted to toss on maybe an accreditation that I've earned over the past little while, or if I did want to bring in my cell phone number, for example, I'm just gonna like make one up here, right? I would enter it in this particular section. I can also update my email address if that's required at this time. There's just one really important thing that you do want to keep an eye on. When it comes to mobile number, it comes in, it's like there's two things that you have to make a switch to before you save on the form. Okay, and it's just this other option here, show mobile number on realtor.ca. If you are looking to have this push through over to realtor.ca, you would just switch this over to the letter Y for yes. Okay. And then once you're finished making some changes and you're all done with your profile, you would just end up hitting the save option here towards the bottom. Just a little side note here, I saw there's just a message in the chat mentioning that I'm cutting out a little bit. Please let me know if anybody else can confirm. I do apologize. I know even one of my roommates is an elementary school teacher, and I'm for sure he's on a session with his students. I'm hoping that my internet isn't going to give us any grief or anything today, but let me know if, hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. I did get one message that I was cutting out a little bit. I really hope that's not the case. Oh, geez. Okay, I'm getting some yeses and some no's on the cutting out. I really do apologize. I'm not sure what I would be able to refresh here. Hopefully, if it gets kind of bad, definitely just give me a little bit of a heads up and I'll see if there's anything I can do here. Okay, appreciate it. So as far as this this section, again, right, this is the distribution form. It's really important to understand that. If you want a change to happen to your profile information, you have to come to this section. It's on the board website and it is your members area. Okay? Once you do that, it takes a little while. There's cache memory. I've seen it take sometimes 15 or 30 minutes. I'm not sure exactly how fast it updates, but you will see it carry through over to this kind of gray section here of your information inside of Matrix. Once you make the change, right, my email address would kind of switch over and be that correct one after I switched it on the OMDREB website. Okay. The very next part is as far as the sticking on that kind of sticking with that thought pattern of the different settings, what I'm going to do is we're going to go in and there's a couple of things inside of these settings that we are going to talk about. One of them that I want to show you, though, it just kind of came back to my mind, is I really did want to show you how to bring in this profile picture. So let's start with that one. So if we make our way over, it is actually tucked away in a little bit of an obscure place, this profile picture, okay? So you do have to go into the Add Edit. It's tucked away in the Input section. So if we go ahead and click on Input, you'll notice this top section is the one that you would use when you're listing a property on the MLS system. We're going to look a little bit further than that. It's just down here under Realtors. If you type in your own OMID for the account you're logged into, and then you click on Edit, it gives you additional kind of manipulation options here. And one of them is manage photos. Okay, so I know it's kind of tucked away in a really silly spot, but this is where you would add in a profile picture if you ever wanted to. Okay, just like how I've done at this point, right? I've got like a profile picture on my dashboard. I open this up, right? It's just like this little headshot that you saw. And all that you would end up doing is you would browse your computer and select that photo. Okay, so you can see that in my case, I didn't follow the instructions too well, right? It's telling me that my photo is below the recommended or lower than the recommended minimum, because it does say 724 by 1086 pixels in size. I just chose a random size. Even if it's smaller, it should still accept it and allow you to proceed. But really up to you. If you have like, if you do your own picture editing, or you have a media person that helps out, you can always just provide them this file size, and that would be the recommended one. But you just browse, certify, and save, and then your photo will be added in. And the exact same thing, right? Like here is the distribution form for your profile picture. It'll go from here over into your profile here on OMDREB. Don't know why that's the direction that it goes, but all the information here on your members area, followed by the profile picture inside of your add edit. So I'll show you that part just really, really quick again. If you click on add edit, it comes down to the member ID section under realtors. When you type in your OMID and hit edit, you are in the form for modifying your account, and it's manage photos. Okay. I got a really, really quick question on just with regards to the recording. Will this recording be sent to the attendees? It won't be sent to the attendees, actually. So what you can do is you can access the recordings at any time in the video training bank. So if you ever want to see them, please make your way over to that spot. Just in your members area, like we've been talking about, down towards the bottom video training bank, and you can just hop in and click on the recording options that we have. Okay, that you could do it kind of at your own leisure there. Just with regards to this specific session, I won't be sending like a recording to everybody. You can access the recordings anytime. Okay, awesome. Now when it comes to a couple of the other settings that we have, the next one I'm going to show you has to do with once you start sending listing information to your clients. What happens is if I email a particular listing, and I'm just going to pull up a random one really quickly here, for example, I didn't put any thought into it or anything, but let's say this is the listing that I'm emailing, and then I click on this email option. And I'm just going to click on preview to show you what I'm talking about. Well, what happens is the listing, when it is sent to your client, it's not sending like a piece of paper that has the listing information on it. What it's doing is it's actually sending an interactive tool to your client that they can use, and they have features inside of here. This is a client portal. Okay, if I go and I as a client, I end up moving in and looking at more information about the listing. Well, I'll see the photos, I'll see different things. Just understanding that it is an interactive space that they use to view the listing. It's called a portal. Okay. The part that I want to show you here is how, if I haven't made any changes to my settings, well, it's saying my name, there's like a white square in that section, and then this like dark banner across the top. That's called the portal header. Let's make some quick changes to that just to make it look a little bit more professional before we start emailing this portal or these listings to our clients. Okay, and where you do that is inside of your settings on Matrix. So if I hover this My Matrix and go back to settings, you may have seen it when we were in the My Information section. That's where it's kind of tucked away. There's a header and footer, and also an email signature that we're going to talk about here. Okay, so if we click on header and footer, you'll notice here that the default is I choose not to use a header and footer at this time. So what you're trying to do is just kind of navigate away from that. So any selection on this screen right now would be a good start, even if I choose this first one. Okay, because you can actually use your own custom banner for this, your own header. And the way that you upload that is actually on the next screen. You do have to click preview. So I'll just, even if I select anything over here, that's anything that is not this top option, will allow me to hit the preview button, which now shows me the rest of the options that follow. Now that I actually have a banner, it allows me this button here that says upload a custom banner image. And just like the way that you browse your computer for the profile picture, right, you would browse your computer for an image that's going to actually fit in that space. So it tells you the suggested image size here, 1600 by 120 pixels, that like really long, just by that really short height type of rectangle. Okay, and you would browse in, right, the portal itself, right, if I go to this tab, is kind of a private conversation between yourself and your client. So please feel free to throw in your own branding here, right? That's just between you and them. So if you want your banner to have like your company logo or anything like that, that's totally up to you. And you could provide this size to your kind of whoever helps you out with photography and media and stuff like that. Okay. Given that I don't have a file size of these exact dimensions, I'm actually going to click select a different banner image so that I could show you some options. The system has a whole bunch of them kind of built in here. Usually I just end up selecting this couch option, right? You can keep going and pick the one that you want, of course. I'm just going to pick the couch. Okay, I can see it come through as a preview straight away. Just like if I uploaded an image, I'd be able to see that preview. Okay. And the next part that I do get inquiries on the phone about is, hey, how do I add in different information here? I want my email, my phone number, I want my client to be able to contact me. Maybe I could put some info there. It's a little obscure how it's described, but it's actually this branding section. So what it does is it pulls in the information that you filled out on the OMDREB website, on that distribution form. The stuff that comes through to your Matrix account will be available here in these drop downs. Okay, so maybe I have my name, perhaps my email address can go on there. Okay, and can do like phone number as well, right? And you'll see they start populating as you choose them out of these drop downs. You have 5 spaces, so if I wanted to add in the office address, postal code, whatever the case may be, I still have 2 spaces, but I'll just use up these 3 to have something more simplified and standard in this case. Okay, and the only thing that's left is, right, like you can have a look through, and there are a couple extra options towards the bottom, right? It shows you a preview of what it'll look like when you go to print it, and also whether you want to have a line at the bottom of the page when you print. I'm just going to leave that as no, and since I'm done with that, I'll just hit save, for example. Okay, so just like that, it's telling me your changes have been saved. And what we could do is just kind of close that preview. We'll open up another portal in a second as a preview so that you can see what this what it actually ends up looking like as well. Okay, but all done with that because I've already hit the save option. And then we're just really quickly going to do the email signature here. Okay, so the default as well is, well, if I sent an email of a listing to my client, it would currently just have this little default of Eric Garand rather than maybe some images or title or kind of contact information, that type of stuff. So just quickly throwing something in here and hitting save as well is going to be helpful. So you can create it from scratch from the tool options. I prefer, since I have one already set up in a different email address, which I'll have to open up. I'm just opening Outlook. It's loading on my other screen. I'm just going to open up like, I don't know, a blank email and copy over my signature. I find that that's like the simplest. So there we go. If I was to create a brand new email, it would look like this, right? And what I'm talking about is just kind of carrying this in rather than starting from scratch. I'll probably just kind of copy it. Just check if I selected it right. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Hit the copy option, right? And then I'll just kind of paste it in. So just like that, right? Carried over, since it's already kind of set out properly with the information, rather than doing it from scratch here. If you have it elsewhere, quick to just kind of copy over. It is a little bit tough for me to show you on the computer or on the shared screen though, because I did use the hotkey on my keyboard, how it says here, paste, Control V, that's what I pressed. Since I'm using Google Chrome as the browser, it wants me to, instead of clicking paste when I right click, it wants me to use the keyboard option, press Control V. So if you see that, just bear that in mind, and maybe you have to use Command C, Command V if you're on like an Apple computer, or just your hotkey Control C, Control V, whatever the case may be. But you just kind of copy it in here, hit the save option, and then those two sides are finished. We've done our header, we've done our signature, and I'm going to do the exact same thing as before. Maybe I'll even go to a recent search. You can highlight that at this point, right? Lets you kind of hop in and look at some of the recent searches you ran. Here we are right back on that listing that we previewed last time. And if I click email, right, now I have a signature coming through that my client would see if we were actually sending this email, of course. And when I hit preview, I could see what the portal looks like, and it's quite different, right? Rather than that white square with my name and being like kind of bland and blank, now we have something that carries through the different portions and goes into the other screens of the portal. It's just a little bit more kind of professional in that sense. Even if I don't have a custom image right now of my branding, I could still do this option really quick just to spice it up, because the default is kind of strange looking, just being like a big dark rectangle towards the top, right? But I'll just close this up. Okay. Got a really quick one. Where do you click again to update the email signature? Yeah, for sure. I'll show you very, very quick. So same thing as before. Settings, My Information. There's an email signature section, and you just do the work in there. Okay. Pop in the information, hit save, and then that'll be kind of your signature moving forward. Yeah, no problem. You're very welcome. Awesome. So let me close this up. Okay. Aha. Now I have a question that I'm actually not 100% sure of. Is the function available for admins? That I'm actually not completely sure of. So we might have to investigate that together a bit later on. Yeah, I guess it depends on a couple things. But yeah, as long as you're able to, because what happens is most of these settings, right, they end up being things that you change for the account that you're logged into. So even if I was updating, for example, my information, and I had to change maybe maybe my colleague that I'm working with, I have to change their email address. Well, you have to do it from their actual profile. So whether they have to do it, or I'm not sure like the best approach, right? Like they do have to go through to the members area into my profile, and then they would make the switch. Like it all seems to happen really like inside of their profile. So these settings are probably something that they'd have to do themselves. But lean towards that option. Okay. Everything here, how you affect it is really through the account that you are actually logged into, how it says like, hello, Eric, right? I'm not currently in like an admin version as I'm viewing it. Like it really is directly the account that you're trying to work with, okay? Awesome. But yeah, really good questions. Thanks for throwing a couple of those in there. Appreciate that. That does also wrap up the different sides of that first topic, really like the different settings. So just remembering, right, there's a couple different spots. There's the profile that you have in your members area on the Oakville Milton District Real Estate Board website. Okay, there's also an input section here where you work on your profile picture in the realtor section, and there is also your settings on Matrix, and they all have kind of different things that you are kind of your goal is you're making a change to like one specific part of it. So just think of kind of those three areas as the spots where you work on the settings that are being distributed. Okay. Okay. And before we transition to well, actually, you know what? I did get a question just about ITSO and the MLS system. And you know what? Since we're transitioning into the search function right now, I'll give you a little bit more history and talk more about ITSO in a second as well. And I'll show you where you can see as well, like a list of the boards that are participating as a part of ITSO as well. That's all coming up in a second. Okay, so I'll try and paint a bigger picture and you can kind of understand all that. I've got another one. Can you show the path of video training? I'm thinking you're talking about the video training bank, hopefully. And yes, if you are trying to get to the video training bank, it's in your members area. Okay, so you can either click, if you have your external links on your main page, you can just click right on members area and it'll take you straight there. If you're just going through from like the start of your browser, you can always just go to OMDREB.ca, click on the members area, type in your OMID and password. Okay, and as you scroll down this left-hand side, there is a video training bank which gives you access to those recorded webinars. Okay, yeah, no problem. So I'll close that up. All right, so let's make our way into those search functions, because there's actually quite a few different search functions that we are going to be talking about. Okay, we're going to talk about this search widget, because there is a pretty specific time, like you're going to use this search widget for a certain reason, and it's going to differ from the times that you probably use a search drop-down, like a residential search. Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. What I did want to talk about before we get into these different types of searches, though, is, and especially since we're getting some questions in the chat about, hey, ITSO and what is like MLS and ITSO and how do these kind of short forms come into play, let me talk about that for just a couple of minutes in that case, and then we'll hop into the search widget. So what I'm going to do at this time is I'm going to run a residential search. Okay. We're going to talk about it in way more detail in a second. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to hop into the map, and that's what I'm going to use when I'm talking about this section. Okay, so having a look at the map is what's going to show me right now, right? I didn't change the criteria in any way. I just left it as the default, right? I can see there's pretty close to 5,000 matches. And when I go to the map, right, I can see that the listings, they all kind of get pinned in these locations, right? The further I zoom out, the larger the zone and the larger the pin. And as you zoom in, they start to spread out into kind of the different boards and the different areas regionally, how it's split. Okay. Well, what ended up happening and kind of where ITSO Real Estate came to be is, well, right now you're using the Matrix system to view our MLS system. That's where all of the listing information, all the properties are listed, is on this MLS system. Okay. ITSO Real Estate is just the rebranding of the combination between Ortis and the Ontario Collective. Okay, so ITSO stands for the Information and Technology Systems of Ontario. It's the new name that came about just this past August 12th when this new platform was released, which kind of started the combination at the time of 22 boards in Ontario. And that's exactly what you're seeing here on screen, right? My map, because I'm zoomed in, is very rectangular and maybe a little tough to work with, but I'm just zoomed in so that it hopefully it looks a little bit better on all the devices and those that are joining the Zoom session. But as you can see here, right, like as I look around, I'm going to notice that, hey, I can see 400, give or take 400 properties in the London area, right? Couple, maybe 400 or more in the Hamilton area, Niagara. Right, so what's happening here is you're seeing all of those 21 boards that currently make up as participating boards of ITSO. And the reason why I say 21 is because, well, there was 22 August 12th, and one board amalgamated into another, it was absorbed, which makes it 21. But it's technically still all the same information, where it's still the 22 boards. One of them kind of, it was like a northern board. I want to say, I forget the exact one, but something like, I don't want to make up a board. I think it was Quinty or something like that. But there was a board that has 75 members that got absorbed into, I believe, Kawartha Lakes, which now makes it 21 boards. Okay, but that's what you're seeing. Like all this information in all these zones is those MLS listings, right? As I zoom in, I'm going to see that these turn into actual pins. Each of these individually is an actual listing on the MLS system. Okay, when you say ITSO, just means that it's that name, that umbrella of those 21 boards that all share these listings. Okay, and you can access all of them. If you're looking to find out the actual list of boards that are participating, I find the easiest way is also on this screen. It's on the map. Okay, there's this section called Jump to Address. So see how the map is right here. We have criteria, map, and results. And if you click this drop down where it says Jump to Address, you see the list of participating boards. Okay? So it might be a little bit tough. It's probably small how the letters are coming through on my screen, in the shared screen, but whenever you do this on your own device, right? If I'm curious, hey, is Mississauga one of the 21 participating ITSO boards? If that's the question I'm asking myself, well, I'm going to scroll down this list. I know it's towards the bottom. I picked that one on purpose. And here it is, Mississauga, right? So here's how you answer that question for yourself. If your client asks you, hey, is London, can you see information in London? Is that listing information that you have access to? Well, look in this list, track it down. Where is it stashed away? It's London and St. Thomas Association of Realtors. It's one of the boards, okay? So effectively, it's important to understand that when you are running a search, okay, when you run a search on this system, you have access to a lot of data, of a wide span, a wide area, and your job in the criteria screen is to break down that information. You're probably, like if you're only looking at information in Oakville for a particular client and it happens to be a specific neighborhood, well, you're probably going to end up specifying that in your criteria, right? Perhaps you're going to draw on the map, and we're going to talk about that later, right? What if I draw this square? Well, this ends up being the 73 listings, the only section that can exist on my map. Now I'm actually talking about the Oakville area, right? And maybe there's stuff in whether it's the criteria or on the map, it's going to help me accomplish that, okay? But when you're talking about the MLS system in general here, ITSO Real Estate, the ITSORealEstate.ca, the MLS system that we use, just understand how many boards actually come into play, okay? I'm getting a lot of questions about searches. We are going to be breaking it down a little bit further, and I'll try to answer those as we go along, okay? But I do want to give you kind of an idea of the big picture, because that is the case, right? We're looking at a very large area in Ontario, and you're kind of breaking down your search as you get more specific for what your client's looking for, okay? Let me see, I'll tackle this question. I might not be able to do every single one because I got a whole bunch of questions about searches, so I'll try to answer them as I go through. But I've got one here. So does this show all the listings of TREB as well? Okay. You know what? Even that one I might have to answer in the question and answer, because we could spend 30 minutes talking just about that question. There's so many different things to consider. But like the one answer I'll give is just like, there's nothing stopping me from listing a property in Toronto right now, right? I can hop in the ad edit, I can list a property, and I could search for properties in Toronto. But the thing is, right, that's just, it depends who is able to actually see that information, right? If I list a property in Toronto, it doesn't mean that TREB members are going to be able to see it. You're most likely going to be listing that property on the TREB system or on the Toronto system when you're listing a property geographically in that area, right? So there is exclusivity, there's different areas, a lot of things to consider. Yeah, I think I kicking myself in the foot already. I just let's talk about that one maybe in the question and answer, because really there's so many questions to answer with regards to shared information, talking about ITSO, comparing to TREB. Let's go into that more into detail in the Q&A after the content, for sure. Yeah, no problem. Okay. So the very first search function that I want to show is this search widget. Okay, it's the one on this main dashboard, right? If you did hop into the session a little bit later here, I did show this at the beginning, but as you close out widgets, they go into your additional section here. If it's tucked away in additional, you may have to just drag it out so that you have it up on the main screen. Okay. The time that you use this search widget is when you know particular information about what you're looking for. If I know the MLS number, I'll probably pop it in here, okay? And it continues through. One of the most common things that I would put in here is if I actually know the address of the property I'm looking for. Okay, and what this will do is it will give me everything with regards to that property. Historically, maybe I'll be able to see a sale that happened in 2004, right? Here's where you put it in, right? If I know the address to maybe the house where I grew up, I wouldn't go into a residential search and try to use criteria to break it down. That would be awfully difficult. What I would do is, I know the street number and the street name. I would use these fields instead. That's your search widget. It's when you know the details of the property, okay? So let's go ahead and one that I just end up using for this one is a property in kind of Thorold or in the St. Catharines area, 55 Burness, okay? And just notice how I entered it. Street number, I would put the number, and street name Burness. Whenever you're putting information in a field on Matrix, you're just going to put the first word, okay? So just Burness, for example, and I'm not putting any additional words. I'm not putting the street suffix, which might be Burness Road or Burness Street, Burness Avenue, just 55 Burness. Okay, being that this one is pretty unique, I can go ahead and run the search. Okay, the same thing would happen if I did this. Okay, the different search fields of Matrix are not case sensitive. You can put it in caps, you could put it in lowercase. It'll still track it down. That the capitalization isn't going to affect your search. Okay, so 55 Burness here, and we can hit search. Okay, and what we end up with, as you can see here, is all of these are for 55 Burness. We have 3 listings, 3 actual sales, and it looks like 3 actual expired listings as well. So historically, it's giving me everything to do with this property in St. Catharines. Okay, at this point, because I didn't make changes to my listing display, something that's going to come into play a little bit later on in the session, right? I can't tell right now which year this actually closed or when this was actually listed, right? I might have to add in some things. Just like your your widgets on your front dashboard, everything on this page can be manipulated and moved around, and we're going to talk about that a lot more coming up. Okay, I might have to add in some additional fields to help me see things more clearly. Okay, but if I wanted to hop in and have a look, like we could start getting familiar with the MLS numbers, right? If I clicked on an MLS number, I'd be looking at the actual listing. Okay, it turns out that this one here, well, judging by the year of the tax and stuff like that, maybe the sale was in 2018, perhaps. List date, 2018. Expiration date, right? Can start to get some more information about the listing. Maybe a really good time to kind of mention as well, whenever you're working on Matrix or any of the other utilities, I always try and advise, never click on this back arrow key. Just forget that it's even there. Get into the habit of navigating by other means, okay? So I've got 6 listings in that list that we were using. I can either hit next to get to the other one if I'm just going to view them from this view. The button that brings you back to your list is right here, Member Single Line Display. If I click on that, it'll take me back to our search results, for example. Right, I can hop into this expired one or the one that actually sold here, which is a historical listing. And if I click on it, it takes me into the listing information. I can click on Member Single Line Display and get right back to this spot. Okay? At no point am I going to be hitting that back arrow key. A lot of the stuff that you do on Matrix is time sensitive, it's time stamped. Maybe I want to use recent searches and things like that. Well, using your back arrow key is just going to kind of confuse it, so stay away from that. Okay? But as you can see, we have historically, very quickly, everything that has been available on this MLS system for the property in question, 55 Burness. Okay, I'm going to click on this Oakville logo. It's the one that I like to use just to get back to the dashboard. Okay. And from here, we'll run another one, just as an example, right? So you notice 55 Burness was quite unique. I didn't have to go into the city and type in St. Catharines, right? But sometimes you might have something that, I don't know, might be something a little bit more common, like a 100 King Street or something like that, right? And if I just put in 100 King, well, just understanding that, just like that conversation we had earlier, well, I mean, wow, I've got 112 listings just with that. If I open up kind of how many I could see on the screen, right, I'll start to notice that the city is, well, there's Hamilton, London, Hensel, Barrie, right? It is that whole area that ITSO covers. I don't even know where Delhi is, right? Like, just always bear that in mind, that the system that you're using is very vast geographically. Okay, and sometimes you might have to break it down. So if it was the case, and instead what I wanted was to do 100 King in Hamilton, well, I can add in a little bit of extra information. Maybe I am going to put the street type if there's two types of Kings, King Street, King Ave, King Road, whatever the case may be, right? But sometimes you might have to be a little bit more specific if it's not a unique name like Burness. Okay. There's one more thing I'll say as well. I'm just making this number up, but let's say it was King William Drive or something like that. Right? Remembering that you only use that first word. Okay? You wouldn't put even King William in this space. It's only that first word that you'd be making use of. Okay? So it'd still be 123 King. You are looking for King William in the list, but one word per entry. Okay? Awesome. So search widget, once again, when you know details of the property. Okay? Awesome. Just kind of glanced on the side of my eye that there was a question about intra-matrix as well. That I'm definitely going to have to come back to. I'd be happy to shed some light on it a little bit. And it is something that accessing outside boards that aren't part of the 21 are in this tools section. Whoops, I did not mean to click on that. So as you can see, you can navigate to a different MLS system like Ottawa or Sudbury. They are not part of the 21 boards of ITSO, but you can use those systems as they become available, much like how intra-matrix used to be used. Okay? Let's talk about that a little bit more in the Q&A as well, though, if you have more questions. Okay? How do you bring the widget back if you close it by mistake? Yeah, no problem. It just means that it went into your additional tab. Additional can't be closed. If you hit the X, it'll be in that list of additional, and you just drag and drop it back out. Okay? Just like that. Okay, so as far as the next portion of a search, what I want to introduce is the wildcard feature, because it has a lot of uses. All right? In talking about the wildcard feature, what I mean by that is you can free up the search a little bit. The thing with Matrix is it is very rigid as a search engine. I had to do only one word. It had to be spelt perfectly. Right? Very different than what we're used to when we search on Google. I can type a word and it could just be gibberish, and Google will say, hey, did you mean this? Or it'll try to help you actually find what you're looking for. Well, Matrix will not do that, okay? If you get something wrong or you spell it differently, it'll just say 0 results, okay? So the function of the wildcard is maybe going to free that up and help you kind of work in additional options. So it's not as rigid, okay? Where we're going to do that is in a roster search. Earlier in the session, I searched for my OMID in this section. This is how you look for other real estate agents, other colleagues, and if you're ever looking for their contact information, you would do it in this section, roster search, and run a member search. Well, for example, my name is Eric Garand, right? Perhaps if you were searching for something like that, well, maybe you don't remember exactly how to spell my last name, perhaps. You still wanted to track me down. Well, something that you could do is use the wildcard, which is this little asterisk symbol. So it's like on my keyboard, it's Shift 8. Okay. And if I was to do something, well, Shift 8, using the asterisk, it'll replace a certain amount of letters to free up the search a little bit. That's the whole point of this wildcard. So if I was to do something like G-A-R-A, which is just the beginning of my last name, and then I threw on the little asterisk, what I'm telling the system right now is that the beginning of this individual's last name must be G-A-R-A. Anything, however, can follow. Any set of characters after that. Okay? When you hover the field as well, like see how I'm hovering hovering the last name field or hovering the first name field, it'll give you details, and it's super tiny. I can't zoom in on that to make it more easily so that you can see it, but if I read that third line in this little info box, it says, if the full name is not known or the spelling is unclear, use the asterisk as a wildcard to replace the missing information. That's exactly what we're doing here. GARA, asterisk at the end, we have 5 matches. Okay, so if I just hop in and look at the results, I would see what the system just tracked down. Okay, GARA, we have an M, Garami, Garand, Garang, Garasto. Notice the kind of that thing that's consistent though is the GARA was all the same. Everything that followed was due to the asterisk that we put in, the wildcard feature. Okay, so I would quickly, through this list, be able to find, because of the 5 results, hey, it was actually Eric that I was looking for. Click on that OMID, and we can actually communicate. You can send me an email kind of thing. It's all available. It's public. It's out there, right? So just like how you'd be able to reach out to maybe a cooperating salesperson or another colleague, you could find them in the member search. Maybe with the same type of way too. Like I end up doing that pretty often. Let's say I did a member search and I was like, oh geez, I totally forgot. Who was it that I was talking to, right? I might even go as far as saying like the first letter was R and the first letter of the last name was S. And I mean, hey, if that's all you have, you're gonna hop in the results and find this person, right? But like you just know there's other ways, be creative, and you can kind of track some extra info down that way. Okay, but the wildcard is going to be really, really useful in different ways. I'll show you how you could use the wildcard as well inside of the residential search, because we're going to make our way into the residential search. One of the first things I'll show you in there is using the wildcard for the public remarks. So let's make our way in at this point. Like normal, just kind of hop to my dashboard before I make a selection. Just force a habit, no particular reason there. But if I go ahead and hover my search menu, we'll hop into the residential search. Okay. All of these other searches are going to look very similar. You land on a criteria screen. Okay. Just going to use residential since it's probably the most commonly used one, but the rest of them are all going to look similar as well. Okay. Maybe just something to note before we hop in is, yes, leases are separated. Okay, so if I'm looking for a rental, I'm not going to look in residential, I'm going to go in the residential lease section. Okay, but in this case, just hopping in residential to start this off. And now we can talk about the layout of this screen a little bit, right? Earlier, when we were talking about ITSO and the participating boards, you noticed me hop into the map feature. Whenever I'm working on this screen or I'm working in a search, I'm very commonly moving in between my criteria, my map, my results, back to my criteria, perhaps back to my map. Not to try and confuse you, but like honestly, you're going to be using these tabs interchangeably until you get the information you're looking for. So be prepared, get familiar with that. Okay, it's going to be crucial that you're going to hop from one to the other. You're going to come back to criteria, make a small change, go back to your results, that type of thing. Okay. You can always see the number of matches towards the bottom here, and whenever you make a selection on this criteria screen, you're going to be keeping an eye on the matches to see how it affected the number of results that you have. Okay, it's all going to kind of work in and come into play. I could see residential towards the top left here, and what I'm going to do though is just do very quickly, we'll do like a little summary of kind of how the screen is broken down. Okay, and the whole idea here and the goal is that these fields and these kind of criteria, I don't know, drawn a blank here, but these these criteria boxes, let's call them, are meant to kind of line up with something that you would commonly see on a property information sheet, right? All you're trying to do is you're trying to think like, hey, what did this listing agent put on the listing that's going to help me find a range of listings that are all similar? Okay, that's like your whole criteria screen is all about matching that up, matching up what the listing agent might have selected when they put the listing up on the MLS system. Certain fields are mandatory when you do an input. Certain fields are optional. So it's going to affect kind of your strategy while you search for listings as well. Okay, so keep that in mind as you come up with the way that you're going to search for the listings. But if we have a look at this form and we split it up a little bit, right, if we're looking at this left-hand side here all the way to this gray line, well, we're seeing things that have to do with the property type, right? We've got the status of the actual listing, the actual subtype of the property, okay? Maybe a little bit of characterization of the type of structure, okay? That kind of sums up everything on the left. If we looked at the middle section here, we've got a little bit of a more linear breakdown on location, right? I can either break down my location by drawing on the map, as you saw earlier, or perhaps I'm going to make a selection, something like typing in the city, or going by region and municipality, right? You might come up with a bit of a strategy, or actually select a couple of neighborhoods if you're a little bit familiar with them and you want to select them out of the list. Okay, so that's this middle section. There's a waterfront section as well. A little bit on rooms, and also using the public remarks. We're going to double back to that because this is the section where we're going to use our wildcard feature in a second. Okay, that's bottom of the center. Bottom of the center. Bottom of this center section of criteria. And then towards the right, if we're just going to cut that part out, well, it'd be like things like very specific about the listing. Features of the listing, price, MLS number, things like how many rooms or bathrooms it may have. Okay, so getting more specific about like a particular feature of a property over here towards the right. Okay, so if you split it into those three sections, right, you can kind of get an idea, gauge an idea of, hey, what type of criteria am I going to be working with? And when you have this goal in mind that you're breaking down the information and the number of matches you have, like this 5,000 or so matches that I have down here, one of the most important things, and kind of like, be careful how many selections you make. Put it that way. Okay. Too often I get a call from a member, and they're like, "Hey, Eric, I'm trying to search for properties. It keeps telling me that I have 0 listings. Like, there's bungalows out there. Why am I getting 0?" And then I try to work through it. I'm like, all right, just walk me through, hey, how did you start this search? Give me a little bit of information. And lo and behold, in the start of their description, they have like literally like 17 different things on this screen, all selected. And you end up hitting 0 pretty quick if you did like 15 selections before even having a look at how it affected your results or your matches kind of thing. Okay, so let me try and deselect all of the garbage that I just caused. There we go. Okay, so I'm back to kind of the default, but yeah, be careful with that. A better approach would be making just a couple of selections at a time and considering how it affected your matches and approaching your results or your map, working in between one or the other, and taking your time, right? Don't do like 30 different checkboxes at a time. You will hit 0. You'll have no results most likely. Okay. In this case, before we start getting into the other types of details or our approach and stuff like that, let's talk about that section that I mentioned. Right? What if I did want to use something like the public remarks to help me track down something about a listing? Okay. Kind of one example that I like using for this, and this section, it will require a little bit of creativity. Okay. It might just be one of your approaches to finding listings. You might have like 2 or 3 different ways that you're going to find a particular listing, and maybe public remarks is like one of your approaches. Okay, what we're going to do is in the kind of Oakville area, something that seems to be popping up more and more commonly with clients is, hey, I would like there to be a nanny suite or an in-law suite. Okay, well, something that you can do is you can actually search inside of the public remarks for that keyword, because in the input, it just so happens there isn't a checkbox that says, hey, is there an in-law suite, yes or no? As a result, most likely the listing agent would have spoken about it in the remarks section or in the public remarks instead. Okay, so maybe we can kind of use that as a way to search for this type of listing. So if I was to type, let's get into the listing agent's mind, for example, and geez, I'm always the worst at this. I should probably, I almost shouldn't even introduce it that way, but let's say that it was just want to say luxurious in-law suite. Large in-law suite attached. Okay, maybe here's my little phrase. Within my massive paragraph of information and description of this property, at some point, the listing agent wrote that there is a large in-law suite attached or on the property or whatever the case may be. Okay, well, notice that this paragraph in the remarks, right, it might be like a large paragraph of information. If you want to find a keyword in there, means we're going to have to use our asterisk feature in our wildcard to help us with that, such as right here. Okay, if I put an asterisk at the start, it's going to be everything that came before the word, and if I use it at the end, it'll be everything following the word. This allows in-law to exist anywhere within the paragraph of information of public remarks. And in this case, I actually got 204 matches where in-law is in the remarks. Okay? Notice how it's very different if I do this, however. If I just type in in-law and I don't put the asterisk and I don't put the wildcard, I actually get 0 matches. Okay? In quick answer to that is just, again, Matrix is so specific that it's saying 100% of the results section, sorry, the remarks section is spelt this way. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters long. There's no listing on the MLS system that literally the whole public remarks section is just the word in-law. Not going to happen, right? So it'll be in the form of a paragraph. It'll be tucked away in the paragraph. You have to use the asterisk and the wildcard to free up how rigid the search is. Okay, 204 matches. Now the next part is going to be, well, human error, right? You're going to have to be a little bit creative. Perhaps there's some listing agents out there that, whether it was on purpose or not on purpose, we're going to say it's probably not on purpose. They might have spelt it incorrectly. What if they spelt it like this, without the hyphen? All right, well, I mean, not too many. We've got 27 matches. Perhaps they put a space. There's 38 of those. Okay, so you might also use an extra feature, which is the combination. If you, anything that you want to combine in here, you just separate with a comma and a space. Okay, so what you would end up doing, and I'm starting to get some messages in the chat about combination. Yeah, no problem. You end up doing, right, something like this. In-law, that correct way, comma space, and anything that you're going to combine. Okay? And I could just keep going. Right? I'm at 263. I found like a whole nother 60 or so listings just by being a little bit more creative, right? So that's that combination right there, comma, space. And if I hover just like before, I think it might tell us about it. Does it tell us about it? Let's see. Maybe not. Asterisk is a wildcard. Doesn't seem to tell us about the combination, unfortunately, but we do have that feature. I think it used to. I don't know why that got updated, but we've got, if you want to combine something, it is one of the features, and it's this comma followed by a space. So I did a whole bunch of them, and since I said nanny, maybe I'll do that one too. Okay. Do I get any more? Maybe like 25 more. Okay, but still, right? We went from, and if I cut this and then paste it back, we went from 204 to 287, right? Just by kind of bringing in, and that's the part what I mean, like you may have to be a little bit more creative than you would expect just because of just in general human error and stuff like that and mistakes. But this would now kind of cover it quite a bit more than just that one that we did at the start by itself, right? We have like another almost a whole nother like 30% extra listings kind of thing. Okay. As far as this section as well, okay? For example, right, I might not have like a box up here that I can just check off for, you know, office space or like I don't know, so I'm just kind of spitballing here, but go station, right? Maybe I would just, my client said it's got to have a go station like a minute away. Well, you might have to be a little creative. Maybe you are finding it in the public remarks. Again, one of your approaches. You're probably going to find a whole bunch of other ways to search for the property, but you'll compare it to the one that you find in here as well. Okay, because you might do a quick public remarks one, right? if I do this in-law that we had set up before, well, I've got 287 matches. I can go to my results. I could look at those. I'm still looking at the entire open system of ITSO. I might have to break down location and things like that, but I started with something of this nature. Okay, just bear in mind, you have your wildcard feature. It's going to have pros and cons, and it's going to work into your approach where you're looking for listings. Okay, so I'm just going to erase that. And let's get back to the top of the screen. I just kind of closed and erased everything that I had here back to my matches. There is one more thing actually towards the bottom that I do want to show you. I came up to the top for nothing. Sorry about that. I'm not trying to make you dizzy or anything, but let me scroll down. Okay. If you ever wanted to add in an additional field as well, maybe you look through this top form and you're finding, hey, like my client asked me for something. It's not in this form. I just can't see it on the criteria screen. Well, there is an option for additional fields as well. Okay. My only disclaimer here is just be careful with it. Okay. Don't use it as like an end-all be-all, because maybe the things in here are optional on the form. I would hate for you to like hide listings from yourself because you're using an optional field. But you can always add additional ones in, right? Like if I wanted something like pool, well, here we go, pool features, add. Now I have a selected field here. When I hit back, okay, gets us back to the residential criteria section. And we now have a pool features in our additional field. So I can say, hey, is it an in-ground pool? Well, 347 matches have an in-ground pool. Once again, this pool feature might be optional in the input, however, so it's just one strategy to find listings. Okay, I'm going to remove it just to avoid distraction there. But just know you have an additional fields as well that you can help use and make use, because it might be something that's available on an info data sheet, whether it's optional or mandatory on that input data sheet is what you want to be careful for. Okay. I got another question. When I'm on my home screen, my matches shows as 4,462 to your 4,857. What is happening? There is something that happens commonly on mine, being that I'm on an administrative account. Mine doesn't filter duplicates automatically where yours does, for example. So like I might have 300 listings here that are actually duplicates, and it's just because, or 300 or 400 of them. Maybe it's like an MLS number that a listing agent posted on the OMDREB system and also posted on the Waterloo system, and the two of them are popping up. Your system would mask one of those two, and mine will not, because it's an administrative search account. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question, but it will show discrepancies in my matches, and it might be annoying when we get to the results, but it does look like that for this purpose. I don't have like a different account I can go into. It really is like it's an admin level account. You got it. Yeah, no worries. All right. So as far as our actual approach, okay, in going in and breaking down and searching for the information, I find that my kind of approach and my favorite way to set up this foundation for the search, just because I'm very much a visual person, I really like using the map. Okay, so the map's not going to apply for every single search you're going to use, pardon me, but if my client is asking me to find a property in a certain area in Oakville, right, I'm probably going to go to my map and draw on the map in order to describe that area. Okay, so let's do that together. How I end up doing that, by the way, is, again, and follow along with me here, because I always have trouble showing this part. I don't want to cause any confusion, but what I actually end up doing, right, remember when we went to the map with our 4,857 results? Well, when you pop to the map, you have to zoom in, there's pins, there's all this stuff kind of all over the place, causing a little bit of distraction. You zoom in, you see the pins on the map. It might be a little bit harder to use the map and actually draw on the map because of those pins. So what I like to do is I purposefully make it so that there's no results. okay? And what I mean by that is I do something on purpose, like in the criteria screen, I might zero out my price, okay? I zeroed out my price on purpose. I have 0 matches, okay, because I'm using the map first, and I will take away this zeroed out price as like a second step. We'll come back here and get rid of this after, okay? But I just put the 0 in so that when I get to my map, it's just like a free-flowing map. There's no results. It's not like slowly trying to load 5,000 listings or anything like that. It just makes it so much quicker to work with. So typically I'll just 0 my price and then hop to the map. Okay, how I did that was there's just no listings that are free. There's no 0 price listings on the MLS system, so that's just a really quick way to do it. Okay. So here we are with our zero listings, 0 pins on the map. And when it comes to the map, what I'd like to do right now is I'm just going to break down, before we start actually drawing on the map, let's talk about these icons and these different shapes and tools that you have access to when you're working with the map in general. Okay. So starting from the left, we've got INRIX drive time, followed by 4 different drawing tools: the radius, rectangle polygon, and the freehand polygon. We can clear all the shapes. We have a layers icon that we're going to talk about, and a recenter that just kind of puts us back to a kind of a centered area, right? If we had like a drawing right here in Oakville and we hit recenter, it would kind of take us back to that section. Let's talk about these different tools here, and I'll do INRIX drive time last, even though it's this option here, but just because the other ones are more straightforward, and then we'll close it off with INRIX. Okay. But what happens is, as you saw before, I drew a really quick rectangle on the map at the start of the session, right? These shapes are basically ways that you can describe a particular area. You're either going to include the things in the drawing or exclude the parts of that shape, okay? But good to get familiar with these drawing tools. I find them the easiest and most effective way to run searches. You start with the drawing, and then you go to your criteria screen and you make selections, for example. Okay, so if I was to select something like the draw radius, right, it's going to be important you kind of get familiar with what it feels like to kind of draw something on there, and notice that there's always a red dot at the drawing where you can hover over and make some changes. I could delete the shape, or I could choose to exclude the shape, right? When it's red, listings cannot exist in that space. When it's blue, that's where the listings are going to go. Right? Ours is zeroed out, so regardless, there won't be any pins, but so that you could start to get a feel for these drawings, right? If I did a rectangle and it was this whole section, right? Kind of make a selection there. We could do the polygon tool, right? If I was to select draw polygon, well, now I can get more specific about how I want it to actually look. I could follow the streets. Okay, that was the polygon. It's a set of like straight lines that you're using. And if it was even more specific, like a couple of these blocks, maybe I'll freehand polygon it. And what I meant to do is something like that shape of those neighborhoods, right? Just something, I mean, I really missed the mark quite a bit here. You're probably going to zoom in and do a much better job. Okay, but let's delete that shape. Those were kind of the 4 different drawing tools that you have for that. I'll just go ahead and delete them, or you could just click clear all shapes. So all that button does is get rid of all those shapes. The next button that you have here is layers, and this one is particularly important and very, very useful. Okay, if I make a selection here on layers, I can put something over top of my map view, something like the region boundaries, the municipalities, or perhaps the neighborhoods, which really helps out. When I make that selection, I can now see the description, I can get this to go away, of the different neighborhoods and their actual boundaries. I can see that Glen Abbey runs kind of east to west here, a little bit north of the QEW. I've got West Oak Trails, Westmount, Bronte Creek. I can see the areas pretty clearly here, right? 125 Navy Street in Oakville, our main office. Is it in central Oakville or is it in old Oakville? Well, if I go north of Lakeshore, let it load here. Hopefully I know where I'm going. I haven't been there in a while. There it is. Okay, north of Lakeshore, corner of Church and Navy. Right here would be the Oakville office, right? Well, which neighborhood is it actually in? It looks like there's a break between the two neighborhoods right here, and we fall as we're right around that area where my little cursor is right now. It's actually Old Oakville, for example. Okay, so that's how you would find that out. You could see the actual cutoffs of where these locations are. Yeah, no problem. I'm getting some messages in the chat. Hey, please show that again. Where did you go? Yeah, you are in the layers icon for this. So right here, those 3 pieces of paper called layers, if you click on this, you can add in different boundary styles, right? Like region, municipality, neighborhood, things like that. Okay. Let me zoom out a bunch so you can. I'm too zoomed out right now. So see how it says zoom in and it's red? I'd have to go a bit closer before I can actually turn it on. But currently, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So it looks like, just to bear in mind, right, you're going to be able to see the neighborhoods for other locations as well. Like I can see the St. Catharines boundaries. I can see them in Welland. I can see them all the way to Dunnville and this Hamilton area, Brantford, Kitchener, Waterloo, all that type of stuff. Okay, Guelph. You can even see the Guelph neighborhoods. How this is happening is it's currently geographically mapped for the previous participating boards of ORDIS. So there's 10 boards that you're going to be able to see all the neighborhoods for, while they are currently creating them for the other 13 boards of the previous Ontario Collective. Okay, bear that in mind. But if I wanted to see the neighborhoods in Hamilton, Brantford, Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, I can see all that because those were previously a part of ORDIS. Okay, so I've got all the Oakville ones here, for example. And it might help me with my drawing, right? Maybe I want, my client tells me, well, hey, I really like this area of West Oakville. Maybe I want West Oakville, Southwest Oakville, a bit of Bronte. Well, I might actually draw that while I have this shape over top. I'm doing a very quick one here, but let's say I did something like this, and that was my shape. Well, look, I have like 3 parts of different neighborhoods here. Maybe not in full neighborhoods, but I've got a bit of Bronte, for example, right? Like you can use this layers icon, help you draw, get rid of the layers icon, and your drawing will kind of stay on there, for example. Okay? So maybe it kind of gives you a little bit of something to follow while you're creating the drawing. Okay? The last tool that I wanted to show again is INRIX Drive Time. Okay, so this tool is interactive. It's a little bit different than, it's very similar to something like a draw polygon, right? If I draw a polygon here, well, listings are going to exist in this space where they're pinned, right? Well, INRIX Drive Time, how it works is it's using that drawing concept, but it's bringing in Google Analytics and driving patterns, okay? So can help you be a little bit interactive with your client, a little bit creative in that sense, where if I click on this, and I'll give you an example, I'll just use myself as an example. Let's say that I am driving to work. I'm not currently, I'm in my home office in the attic right now doing this kind of session, but let's say that I was typically driving to 125 Navy Street in Oakville for work. Run the search. Okay, it might ask me to confirm the location. Perfect, there we go, 125 Navy. And I drive to here. The OMDREB opens at 8:30. Maybe I want to be to work at about 8:15. And we'll say that my maximum commute that I'm looking for is 20 minutes on a typical Monday morning, let's say. Okay, if I hit add, okay, this is bringing in information from basically Google Maps, let's say. Like if I ran Google Maps, it would tell me that I can get from here to here in about 20 minutes, that type of thing. So it's using that to create the drawing. It's telling me, hey, like if my client is telling me that they don't want to drive any longer than 20 minutes to work, by default, here's the shape, okay? You can do something like your client's commute to help you when they're unsure of the, hey, where do you want to live? And they cannot answer that for you. Maybe this tool helps you a little bit with that, that conversation, let's say. And it's a little interactive, so it could be fun as well, okay? So here we go. You notice that in 20 minutes, it looks like you can get all the way up to almost into Erin Mills. I don't know how, I want to say that that has a lot to do with the current situation and lockdown and everything. Remember, I said that it has to do with road patterns, road conditions in Google Analytics. You can get a lot further in 20 minutes right now than you could, I don't know, 2 years ago at this time. Pick 2 years because this has been going on a while, but let's just say like it will actually change. Let's say things are different 12 months from now. The shape will be smaller because there's just fewer cars on the road right now, for example. Okay, but it actually takes that into account like really quickly. It updates with Google Maps and how it does its analytics for driving. Okay. What you can end up doing here is, well, when you hover the dot as well, you can make some slight changes to it. So if I hover that and I want to get a better feel for that, how the analytics and the driving patterns come into play, I can click Change Drive Time Info. And what I'm going to do here, I didn't really get a good feel for where we were, but like right here, we're probably kind of getting into we're pretty close to getting into Burlington and stuff like that, I want to say. And if we change this, right, instead of 8:15, which is already a time that maybe there's not that many cars on the road at 8:15, but I'll change it even so that there's fewer cars. Let's go 3 a.m. We'll keep it at 20 minutes and we'll hit update, right? Because of the driving patterns and there's fewer cars, I would expect the drawing to grow a little bit. There we go. Boom. It just kind of popped out, right? It was around this area here for 20 minutes. It's saying that I might get technically almost all the way to like pretty close to the Burlington Skyway. I'd be able to get 20 minutes if it was 3 in the morning. I can get much higher up. I can almost get into this area close to like Milton. We can definitely get into Erin Mills and make it in. Once again, it's 3 in the morning, right? Fewer cars on the road. So that's the main concept of INRIX drive time, and times that it could be really, really effective is like, let's say that you are working with your current client is they're a couple. It's like, I don't know, in this case, we'll say it's a husband and wife, and you run both of their INRIX drive times, both of their driving patterns end up overlapping in a section similar to this. Well, because of the two drawings, right, I didn't run an INRIX for this one here. I just drew it with a polygon, but if that ends up being the overlap, right, the only section where we would be looking for properties for this client is kind of in this section where it overlapped. I might draw an extra shape over that part, but now your client has a better idea. Hey, like this is where, if you're both only looking for a 20-minute commute to work, right? One is commuting into Milton, let's say, the other is commuting into Oakville, right? I mean, this one is kind of an easier example. It ends up being this space, but right, whatever the case may be, maybe the drive time is a way that you kind of help them figure out that area that's going to work for them. Okay, that's INRIX, all your other drawing tools, and your layers icon. You're going to end up using these tools pretty often. Some of them are interactive, but do get familiar with them because they could be really effective and really helpful. Okay, so I'm just going to hop to my main dashboard here, and what I'm going to do at this point is I'm just going to walk you through as I run a search. My client has told me in this example, right, hey, I'd like you to find me properties in a certain price range. Something like, I don't know, 800,000 to 1.1 million on the top end. Maybe I'll go 1.2 million. Let's go 800,000 to 1.2 million. The areas that I really like are a good section of Glen Abbey, Westmount, and West Oak Trails. Can you find me a property in that area? Well, here's how I would approach that kind of case study, right? How am I finding this property? Well, is it going to be a house? Is it going to be a condo? It's all stuff that's going to come up. But how you would approach it is by, right, I'm going to hop into residential. I'm going to zero out my price on purpose. I'm going to jump to the map because that's my first step. And I'm going to draw that section. Okay. Find that area of West Oak Trails, Glen Abbey. Okay, how much am I drawing? Am I drawing like all this here? Maybe I'll use my layers icon to help me out a bit of a neighborhood drop. Okay, and we can draw this out. I think if I zoom in once, I'm too zoomed in. Maybe I could leave this. Maybe we can pull it off with this screen up. Okay, so West Oak Trails is this square. We have Westmount, and we have Glen Abbey, runs all the way east-west here. I might just take that first portion that has Westmount. I'm going to use my draw polygon for this. So maybe I'll stay away from this industrial area of QEW, or kind of that most likely more commercial area of the QEW, and I'll stay along this line as I create a bit of a drawing. I'm going way more specific than I normally do here. Sorry, let's just let's go a bit quicker. So let me just go and grab what I could here, make my way into this gap. All right, mine's not looking so good. Kind of drop to these portions, and maybe here I'm just going to cut across this green zone, and I'll go like this as I cut this off here. Okay, perfect. So let's say that's my drawing. I've got West Oak Trails, Westmount, and a good solid portion of Glen Abbey. Now that I've drawn that, I get rid of my neighborhood. I'm left with a drawing. Okay, perfect. Here's the place where my client's looking for a property. And then I just hop back to my criteria and I get rid of the price. Now I have the base set up. I've got 78 matches in mine. Again, remembering I might have a couple duplicates. Yours might be a slightly different number here just because my administrative account. But if I hop back to my map quickly as well, that's the only place where listings can exist. I'm not going to get distracted by the rest of ITSO and all of those participating boards on the outside. Right, maybe I don't need a listing geographically in Kitchener right now, but I could still see everything pinned in my drawing. Even if a Kitchener agent listed the property in this drawing, I would see it because I drew it. Okay, perfect. So I've got all these listings. Now we can start to see, all right, what kind of price range are we working with on a totally open search? Right now it's still active, and I think even conditional was selected. Okay, we've got some upper end. I saw like a 1.6 million, no, 1.8 million. There's probably like some $2 and some $3 million ones tucked away. Maybe some $400,000 and $500,000 condos as well. So we're going to start breaking this down a little bit further. 78 listings. There's a lot of irrelevant stuff for my client right now. Okay, so we're going to go to criteria and refine it. Okay, the base we're working with is 78 matches. Maybe we are taking away conditional. Does it affect it at all? We only got rid of 9, but maybe we'll just stick with active for now. And let's keep working down the form. Do we want this to be a house or a condo? Well, in this case, our client said, you know what, I'm just looking for a house. It's probably going to cut our matches in half. Pretty well in half here. We are now working with the property type house. Okay, and they did tell us that they had a price range in mind. We kind of talked them into changing it to 800 to 1.2 million. Okay, maybe even if I did a 9, does it even change? Only a couple listings go away, right? But this is how you end up starting to break it down. I'm always keeping an eye on the number of matches as I work through the changes that I'm making. And what I did was I drew a section on the map, and I literally did like 2 selections. House, price, right? There's not like 30 different things that I checked off. I'm already down to 13 matches. I'm probably going to go investigate these 13 listings and work from those. Okay, so let's go back to the map. We can have another peek. It looks like this puts us right out of the Glen Abbey area, probably because of our price range, right? Doesn't seem to be anything that is a house listed below 1.2 million in Glen Abbey. So, I mean, that's just the way that it happened with their price range. If they change that, maybe we start having some listings here more in Heritage Way and Nottingham Gate when we're in the 1.5, 1.6 million, right? But here we are. We're a little bit further out into West Oak Trails and Westmount, and here's what we're working with. Okay, we can have maybe even a quick view at what we ended up with. Some of these listings will give us number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. We might break it down even further if we decide to, if 13 is too much. And how we can do that is, especially by going into our results and working with this single line display like we were before. I can go into a listing, I can have a look at it, I can get rid of a couple, and undoubtedly I'm going to have potentially some duplicates, as I mentioned, with my administrative account. Okay, so like I might get rid of this one that I know is a duplicate because of my account. And if I look at the rest, oh, this one too. Oh, and this one too. Okay, so there was 3. I think I got them all. Okay, and I might do something like an action here. Refine, discard. So I might just get rid of those 3. They were just duplicates because of my account. And if I have one more quick glance, it looks like I missed one. Here's another one. There we go. Now I have a list of 9 unique listings, and I could investigate a little bit further. Okay. So let's talk about these listings just so that I'm not causing any confusion as well. Okay, so what is happening in this area right now? There is currently a geographical agreement in place with OMDREB, okay? So right now, when I run a search in this area, this is only true for the areas of Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills. This is coming into play because we're actually in the Oakville area with the neighborhoods that we chose. They are in really like Westmount, Glen Abbey, West Oak Trails. It's right in Oakville. So there is currently some shared information. This MLS number starting with a TW is a part of that shared agreement and that shared information. This was a listing that a Toronto agent put on the OMDREB system. Like they listed it on Stratus. We're able to see it on our system as a shared listing because of that sharing of information. It's in Halton, it's in Oakville. Any listing in Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills comes through that agreement. It's a two-way street. Okay, so it's currently active, and that is if I list a property in Oakville, Toronto agents can see it on their system. If a Toronto agent lists a property in Oakville on their system, OMDREB members can see it. That's exclusive to Oakville and Milton District Real Estate Board members. Even though we're sharing information with 21 boards, if you're a member of Kitchener and you search for properties in Oakville, you do not see the shared agreement with OMDREB. Okay. Hopefully that explains some of the OMDREB stuff that's going to come up in the Q&A. We're going to end up talking about that some more for sure. Okay, but that's like one part, and we'll definitely chat about that in Q&A in like 20 minutes or so if there's more that you're wondering about it. Okay, but that's my quick version of some of these things that you're seeing. Okay, but you could tell the difference really quickly. These TW ones came in through that agreement because geographically they're in Oakville. These TW ones were listed on the Toronto MLS system. So like the OMDREB Stratus most likely. Okay, and the 400 listings are the most likely ones that were put on by a member of ITSO. Someone who is one of the part of one of the 21 participating boards of ITSO would have put this listing up. These four. Okay, it's like half our ITSO and half our OMDREB just in this particular area and how we pulled it up here with the 9 listings. Okay. What I want to show you on this screen now, which was something from earlier as well, the fact that you can customize the listing displays, right? As I mentioned, right? Like what if I want to know more about maybe the listing date or how many days the property's been on the market. Maybe I want to actually see not only the address and the city, but also something that shows me the neighborhood. And I don't want to click on it every single time, find the neighborhood, and then go back to member single line display, and then go to the next one and like look at the neighborhood, and then go back to member single line display. Right, as I said earlier, you can manipulate this whole screen. So let's talk about that. It's called customizing this listing display. So as you saw, right, you might have caught it earlier, I was dragging my columns around, and that's exactly what you end up doing. All the way towards this right-hand side, there's a column called Days on Market, right, DOM. I've got 1 day on market, 8 days on market. I could see how long they've been up, and maybe I want to drag that over and bring it towards the side here, right? Maybe I want this to be right like front and center all the way towards the left. One of the first things that I notice is days on market, perhaps. Well, how you accomplish that and you start to organize it and move it around is by kind of moving your cursor over that gray space where the title is. Okay, be careful not to click on the actual blue part of the title because that does something different. It'll actually arrange them. If I click on current price, it'll arrange them by price. Like right now I clicked on it and it's going in kind of ascending order, and if I click on it again, it'll go in descending order. So clicking on the blue part of the title arranges them in that order. Okay, what I'm trying to do though is just get into the gray space where you could see that crosshair to move something. See how like I'm a pointer right now, and I know it's like tiny. I can't zoom in on this though, unfortunately, but my pointer is like a mouse pointer, and if I go into the gray space, it's now the move icon. Well, if I do that over here under address, I could just click and drag and I can move address over. Okay, that's kind of how you end up manipulating this screen because it's going to be vital and very important that you change the look of this screen, because the default is horrible. There's no other way to put it. The default is not going to help you very much. You're going to need more information. You need to create that yourself. Okay? Create the listing display the way that you want to see the information in this table. The default is so bland. It doesn't give you enough information to actually do the work that you need to do. Okay? So you're going to spend some time making this a lot better. Okay? And this is going to be different for every single member. That's why there's a default, and you can change it however you want. Okay? If I want city to be right next to address, well, I might just move it over. Okay? And the final thing is, if you want to add or remove columns, you can do that as well. Right? If, I don't know, which one do I want to get rid of in this example? Well, I mean, in this case, common interest ended up being freehold for all of these, right? If I click on common interest and I remove the column, right, it would be gone. Now there's not that space, or above ground square footage, below ground square footage. You can get rid of it, okay? Just the same way that you can bring it back and insert it, and what you would end up doing is you, instead of clicking and dragging, you just click and you let go in that gray space, okay? And the large paragraph of the question that just came in, I'm going to answer that in 30 seconds. As far as this insert and remove, okay? What you end up doing in this case, as I just did there, right? If I want to click in that gray space, I've got the remove or the insert. I can always click insert and then bring back that column that had freehold, right? What I'm going to do instead is, well, maybe something that's going to help is something like neighborhood. So you have a keyword search, right? This is the hundreds of columns that you can bring in. So it's a very kind of wide list here. Lots of different things you can bring in. There's probably hundreds and hundreds, but if I just type in the keyword like NEI to start neighborhood, I will find through the keyword search, maybe it helps out that way, right? Neighborhood, add that in, and now I actually have a neighborhood and subdistrict section, okay? Move that around, and here we are. Looks like my system doesn't really like what I did here visually. Maybe it's because of my slow internet, but we'll get that back in a second. Okay, we've got neighborhood subdistrict added in, and what you will end up doing, okay, so that it doesn't reset. And I've got like 3 people in the chat all asking me about this right now. Yes, you can absolutely do it so it doesn't reset on you. Something really specific that you have to do is click on this gear icon and click this top option. It is a mouthful. It's a lot of words, but it's basically what it's trying to say is this is how are you looking to set this as your new default, or do you want to reset to the old default? Okay, so it's that top option. Set current display, sort order, and count per page as my search starting default. When I click on this option, I will have a pop-up that says your search defaults have been set, which means the next time I run a residential search, I will have days on market over here, I will have neighborhood over here, and city over here, and the freehold column will be gone. Until I add it back in and set that as the new default. Okay? To show you an example here, if I hopped out of here, I'll get back to that in a second, but if I click on my Oakville logo and I run a residential search, and then I go to the results, notice the new layout. It has days on market, it has neighborhood. It's like that until I set it as my, if I go and I reset it, don't follow my steps here, because I'm actually going to reset mine, but if I click reset, it took a little while to load there. I almost went to click it a second time, but I think my internet is a bit slow. Sorry about that. But I just reset and it cleared my default, and I'm back to the bland normal one that probably has things like common interest, days on market on the right. Well, it'll reset every time if you don't actually set the new default. And that's what some of your members were kind of saying in the chat, and I appreciate that. Yes, you really do have to click this option, set current display sort or count per page as my new search starting default. This is the only way for it to actually save the changes you made, right? I can take my days on market, I could take them away from that right-hand side. I could bring them over to where I want, and then I can set the new default. I think my internet is giving me grief here. There we go. And your search defaults have been set. Now days on market will be here next time I run a residential search. You're going to set up your own, and you're going to make it to be the things that will be effective for you, and then you'll set your default. Okay? A lot of screens that you're working on are going to have that little gear icon, and they'll have an option to set a default. An example of that is right here when I do the residential search from its base, right at the beginning of a residential search. The default happens to be that conditional is selected. If I don't like that, I can unselect it or get rid of it, and I could just set that as my new default. The next time I run a residential search, conditional won't be clicked off. A lot of screens are like that. Notice the little gear, notice conditional is now unchecked. That just happens to be the default, but you can change that yourself. Okay? Perfect. I'm going to hop back into that search in a second. I just want to read through really quickly a couple of these questions to see if there's something for now or possibly for the Q&A. Let me see. Okay. Well, let's do that here. So if I was, hopefully this answers your question, the one that just came in about emailing. Let me bring up what we were working on before. Is it this one? So you'll notice something that's commonly overlooked as well, the recent searches section. Okay. I haven't saved any searches, but if you use your recent searches, it's going to show you the things you've been working on during this session, right? Maybe I'll click on this one here. Perfect. That's actually the one that we were kind of working with our 9 listings. Okay. Yeah, if you are, I did get a question, hey, how do I email multiple search results to a client, multiple properties? Do I need to click on each one and send manually? Well, again, remember that what you're sending to your client is an interactive portal, right? You're sending them a tool where they can view listings in a portal. So if you wanted to do like all 5 of these that are showing up on this screen, for example, you can click like the select all. You can select more than one at a time, and you can email them out, right? Same as printing them out or that kind of thing. Okay, hopefully that answers your question. If it goes further than that, we'll chat about it more in the Q&A as well. Okay. One thing to notice towards the bottom of your screen here as well is this summary. Okay, this could be really, really helpful, this criteria summary that you have. It could be a really quick way that you can track something down if maybe you accidentally made a selection that you weren't intending. Okay, for example, I've got residential, active, house. This is the drawing that we made on the map, the latitude, longitude. We have a price range. The summary tells us really clearly what we did, right? If you go to criteria, the screen is very busy. It's hard to tell if you selected something by accident, like fully winterized. If I check this off by accident and I'm at 0 matches, it might be tough for me to look at this screen and I'm just scratching my head, what in the world did I select? I cannot see on this screen where it is. Well, your summary might be a really quick way to track that down. If I look at the summary screen, it's easier to read than the massive criteria screen that you have to scroll down on. I might go residential, active, house, winterized is fully winterized. I'd find out pretty quickly that this was my issue, and now I know what I'm looking for on my criteria screen that I have to go uncheck, right? Now I can go to criteria, I can look for it, I can read, I'm only looking for fully winterized. There we go, I checked it off by accident, I got my matches back. Okay, so just like a little step for you, just remember that you always have that summary. And something that's going to come into play right now as well, because we've done all the changes, we've approached our search, we found results, we know how we're going to select them, email them to clients if we have to. Perhaps, maybe we're not sending them to clients at this point, and we're just looking to save the search. Okay, what you end up doing for that is you click on this save option, okay, and you have this button, new saved search. You saw me pull this search from my recent searches, but perhaps I actually want to just save the search because I'm going to run it later on in the week. Okay, this is properties for client, I don't know, right? You would put your client's name or whatever the case may be. I'm just naming this randomly because mine is just a test. You get to see a bit of a summary of your criteria when you save a search. You can assign it to a client if you want as well. Mine are pretty basic. It's just me. My clients are me testing with a bunch of emails. But just set that up, hit the save option. And let's say that this was something that, hey, we're just kind of starting out. We're looking for properties for this client in Glen Abbey, West Oak Trails, and Westmount with the details they gave us. And maybe next week I'm actually going to run the search. Well, I can always go into my saved searches now through my matrix, saved searches, and I can find that one in the list. Okay, got probably a whole bunch here from all tests and things that I was doing, even as basic as calling it test, because I'm not the most creative with titles. But let's see, what was the one that we just made? It's on here somewhere, properties for client. That's the title from today. So we've got the 2nd of February 2021, properties for client, right? If I ever want to run this search, I can make changes to it. I could jump right to the results and see the information that we have. Okay, perfect. So with the little bit of time that we have left, since we've set up the approach to searches, right, starting with the map function to help us with that, just going to conclude with a kind of a final quick topic here, and that's just if you are looking maybe on the other side of the search, right, rather than finding specifically some listings for your clients, one really good way that you can actually just keep an eye on the market, or you want to look at properties in your trading area, is by using something like the Hot Sheets widget. So I'm going to spend a few minutes, we're just going to set up a really quick one so that you can see what that ends up looking like. And the widget I'm talking about is Hot Sheets as a title. Mine is going to look very different than yours because I've already customized mine. In a second, I'm going to reset this so it looks just like yours, and we're going to bring it right back to this view. Okay, so here's the Hot Sheets. Same thing as before. If it's closed out and it's tucked away in your additional, you might have to just drag it out onto the main screen. Maybe you bring it up front and center. The whole goal here, though, is a hot sheet is a time-based search. I could search specifically with something that I've customized, and I could search it for just today. I could search it for the last 3 days, the last 7 days. I could even customize the date range, for example. If I was to do it for the last 3 days, and I set up something like residential and multi-residential in Oakville, well, just a click away from always running a general search like that, and I can keep an eye on the market, for example. How much happened in the last 3 days in the area that I selected for the property types that I selected? Okay, just a way to gauge the market, and it's going to apply really similarly to how you manage the Market Watch widget as well, because that one also has to be customized. So Market Watch, pretty similar to Hot Sheets. Let's talk about this Hot Sheets one though. So for example here, when you hit on Customize, okay, and we make our way through to this Hot Sheets section, notice that these titles, they're just placeholders. You can rename them, you can delete them, right? I can just delete this one that I made, I can delete this one as well, we're down to nothing. We can add a brand new one from scratch. Well, let me just restore the system defaults. I'll make it look like yours, okay? So let me go ahead and bring this in. I'm going to hit this default, reset the default, and this is what yours looks like. But what happens is if I run a residential search, or I run a residential lease, or a multi-residential, or farm, I'm looking at a hot sheet, which is 21 boards. You're looking at a lot of information that maybe doesn't apply right to your area. So again, you're going to have to edit the criteria and customize it so that it shows you what you're actually looking for in your trading area. Okay, so we just quickly do that. And since these are placeholders, that's the whole thing. That's why I end up deleting these. So the first thing that I do is I actually just get rid of these. The default is not overly helpful. It just gives you every title that's inside your search dropdown, for example. So we're just going to get rid of these. And we are actually going to start from scratch. Okay, these aren't doing anything. They're going to give me like hundreds and hundreds of listings if I run the search. Now that it's blank, we only have one button left, add. So let's add, okay. You get to choose the hot sheet type. A good time for me to introduce cross property, okay. And what happens here is if you select something like residential, Well, you're only looking at residential properties. If you select only farm, right, it's only farm. Land is only land. It gives you one selection. Just like if I went to search land, I'm looking at only that property type. If you select cross property, that's the one that lets you choose potentially more than one. And you could run your search that way as well, just like this. If you like running cross property searches, well, maybe your client is looking for farm and land, and you would combine those two property types in cross property. That's all it does. It just lets you combine more than one, and you'll see how in the next step. Okay, but I'm going to name this exactly what you saw on my screen before. I'm going to go with new listings for this one. Right? It might end up being new leases for you, or new leases in Oakville, new leases in Milton, new leases in Halton, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to go new residential and multi-residential in Milton. Okay, so I've got just my description, how we decided to write that in, and it's cross-property to allow us to do a couple different types. Hit the save option. Now it is just a placeholder. We've named an open search, and we have to edit the criteria for it to be a more closed search for what we're looking for. We have to break down the criteria by going in this edit. Now this should look really familiar to what we were working on, except we're in a hot sheet customization screen. Okay. We have the change type. We are going to be using new listing in this case because it's kind of just part of our title. We're looking for new in Milton, right? New just means that it hit the market under active status within the last 14 days. Okay, that's what describes a new listing. What you'll notice below here is that there's something additional that got added on. This little section with the property type checkboxes is only available on a cross-property criteria screen, which is the place where I can do residential and multi-residential. I could do residential and lease. I can do farm, land, and residential, right? These are all status types under the search dropdown, and if I went to cross-property, I can do 2 at once or 3 at once. We are doing a cross-property for the case of this hot sheet, and the one that we're looking for is residential and multi-residential. And we also said Milton, so I'm going to skip to the city and type in Milton. There we are. So just like that, we have new listings, residential, multi-residential, Milton. I'm going to hit save. I've customized this particular hot sheet. We can hit done, and when we run it for a time range, maybe something like the last 24 hours, as soon as you click on the title, it actually runs that search. There's 14 listings that are new residential and multi-residential. Right? Some of them might be townhouses, some might be houses, because we didn't break that down. This is just a default listing display that I might change for my hot sheet at some point. Okay, but right now we have 14 that met our criteria in our trading area. Okay, so if I did that other one really quickly as well that you saw previously, customize, add, new resi and multi-resi in Oakville, save, edit criteria, new residential, multi-residential Oakville, just like that. I've created the second hot sheet, hit done, and maybe every day at 3 p.m., part of my routine in this kind of afternoon section of the day, over a 24-hour kind of viewing, I would just jump into this one really quick, notice that there's 18 new listings, have a quick peek at them, and tomorrow I'll do the same thing. Have a look at how the market changed over the last 24 hours. And maybe that's just like a way that I manage the market, something general, still in the area that I trade in. And I can create a whole bunch of hot sheets, right? I can create ones for leases, I can create some for condominiums, I can do whatever I want, but this would be like an approach for a more generalized search that's not for one client, but maybe for my business in general.